All right, we are back with Nate from Next Gen. Get his reaction on the remarriage of Allison and General Motors. All right, so here is the article from the Drive. So it basically says GM heavy duty pickups will keep Allison branding after all. That's the Drive article you read. The quote that's up there now is from that article. GM spokesperson told the Drive, as you know, GM and Allison have a long history of working together to develop tough, dependable transmissions. This agreement will reinforce to customers that Chevy and GM HD trucks are equipped with a trusted Allison branded 10L 1000 10-speed transmission that delivers performance, capability, and durability the customers expect, which is just hilarious. What are your reactions?
That's a General Motors spokesperson. So their entire job is to protect their employer. That's what public relations is. It's protecting your employer. That goes for every industry. So when he says that General Motors and Allison have a long history of designing durable transmissions together, they're referring in the General Motors vehicles to the 2001 through 2019 Allison LCT series transmission. That transmission was designed by Allison, not General Motors. All General Motors did was supervised the creation of a bell housing specifically for General Motors applications behind the 8.1 liter gas engine and the Isuzu ISF, Duramax, whatever you want to call it, the Duramax engines, LB7 through L5P. Gen 1. So that is the relationship between Allison and General Motors in reference to the transmission that was reliable. All right, so when they say that, they're taking credit for the work Allison did. The Allison transmission you would find in the earlier Duramax trucks. That transmission was in use in things like motorhomes and larger trucks and commercial vehicles. It has been in use there for such a long time. General Motors didn't create that intellectual property. Allison did. General Motors simply supervised it becoming compatible with their existing adapter plate that they use on almost every larger vehicle's engine. So that is already a misrepresentation of fact. When we go over to the part where they're proud to have the Allison 10L 1000 transmission that delivers the durability that customers expect, that is total puffery. This transmission will never, ever, ever hold a candle without serious modification to the Allison 5 and 6 speed that came before it, because they have no mutual parts. It's not an Allison transmission. I've said this so many times. I design parts for Allison. I design parts for General Motors transmissions. And I can tell you right off the bat, they don't have anything mutual. The 10-speed Allison is based on the Ford 10-speed transmission, and both of those are based on the ZF 8HP transmission, because they're larger versions of the 10R80 and 10L80 based on the 8HP 70 and 75. So that's just fake news. They're just lying to the public, as they usually do, in my opinion.
So last year, most people know this, you sent me something where, and this went around the internet, Allison breaks up with General Motors. Basically, they were done with them, and it was specific to a document that really was, it seemed like they were angry about something, because they were actually saying, hey, you need to actually debadge your products by June 29th, 2026. That seemed a little heavy-handed for someone that had this great relationship for decades. So we came out and said, hey, that looks weird and looks like someone was upset. Now, I still stand by that they were upset about the quality of the transmissions from 2021 on. What do you think about that now that they're rejoining?
So here's what everybody needs to know. Let's go back to PEG 1, where Allison has this leaked memo to GM saying, hey, this is over. If we go back to that, my opinion, which at this point is just obviously correct, is that Allison didn't see the value in the relationship with General Motors that justified the value that they were getting back. Well, why would that be? General Motors is just giving them money. Like, you would think that for a transmission that they don't, owe parts on or anything like that, you would think that Allison was just benefiting from the relationship, because they're essentially selling their brand identity. All right. Keep in mind, this is not an Allison transmission. They just named it an Allison for marketing reasons. It's no different than when you buy, Jordan shoes. Michael Jordan didn't make them. Nike paid to use his name. There's nothing Allison about it. In addition to that, the whole reason the transmission is unreliable is not going to change, right? So when you see a letter like that get issued from one party to the other, and Allison is the party behind the branding, and General Motors is the party behind the engineering, it raises lots of questions. Why is there no value in the relationship between the two of you, right? Well, clearly General Motors is taking something from them that is in excess of what Allison is being paid for their likeness. Well, how could General Motors be doing damage like that? The only possible answer is like this endless torrent of bulletins or recalls or whatever have you, right? That's the only logical reason. Now, apparently, they're going to work together again. Well, what happened? Did General Motors reach out to Allison and say, pretty please? Like, of course not. Of course not. Pretty please in business is more money. So obviously, General Motors had to offset the brand damage they were doing with more money. It would not be unreasonable for General Motors to have some actuaries crunch the numbers and say, okay, well, we're going to make $10 billion off keeping this badge on the truck, and Allison wants another $1 billion to perpetuate our contract. So we're just going to spend the $1 billion, and that's how we're going to make the $10 billion. And Allison might disagree with that philosophically, but the executives don't make the decisions, the board does, because the board is the ownership. The executives are the cuck of the board. So what happens is the executives in these environments, these corporate environments, have to answer to the board. And if they tell the board, listen, these guys are doing brand damage, but they're offering us another $1 billion, they're going to say take the $1 billion, because the reality is that investors live life 90 days at a time, earnings report to earnings report. Because of this, they're very myopic. They're short-sighted, right? They only see what's in front of them, because anything after 90 days, they can liquidate their equity and then go move over to another holding. So they want to see as much profit as possible in those 90-day windows. I would not be surprised if the board at Allison said, no, you're taking the deal. And now the executives who don't like the deal, or the lawyers who don't like the deal, are now taking this deal that they don't want to take, right? So I think that the only possibility is that General Motors offset that lack of value with something. Well, something is more money. General Motors paid more money. Why did General Motors pay more money? Because Allison didn't want to work with them. And so more money made them want to work with them. And now they're working together again. That is how contract negotiations work in every line of business. Am I getting what I'm paying for? And am I getting paid proportionally to what I'm giving? That is a contract. When people on the internet or whomever, or articles or whatever, when they say, oh, well, it was just a contract dispute and it was figured out. Okay. Yeah, correct. A contract dispute about what? Is it yeah, like it's so stupid. It's so
Yeah.
dumb. Like, okay, what was the contract dispute about? Like, did two guys just square up and start boxing over a contract? Of course not. There was something that didn't make sense for somebody. Well, Allison withdrew from the contract because we have the paperwork. Okay, it got leaked. So now, obviously, Allison said, "Whatever you're paying me is not enough, and I'm upset with you given the tenor of the letter." Right. The only way you overcome that is with more money or more deliverables, if not physically capital, right? Or in liquid sense, capital. So why did General Motors have to do that? The only logical answer is they paid more. Why would they pay more? Because Allison didn't want to work with them because of some reason that was harming their brand, more so than the cost of the capital. So there's no way to know what happens in a board meeting. And that's why anybody on the internet talking about how they know what happened in the board meeting is just making it up. The reality is that obviously there was a contract dispute, and obviously it was about General Motors not having the value to give Allison. And I believe the most likely outcome is that they paid their way out of that. There's no other logical way that would happen.
I agree. It's impossible for us to know exactly what happened, but obviously something happened. And you know, Allison's a pretty healthy company too. I don't know if anybody pays attention, but their profit margin is like 20 some percent or 40 some percent, something like that. I think it's 25% higher margin than what General Motors is. So even though GM's market cap is much higher, they're a larger company, they have more revenue. Allison's probably a healthier company, and they've got defense contracts for the Abrams tank, all sorts of stuff. Like you said, reputation matters to them. It doesn't matter that much to General Motors.
Of course it doesn't. Why would it? So General Motors, they clearly don't care about branding enough, because they've lost so much trust as a result of the 10-speed situation. that now we're in a position where people don't want to buy the vehicles. That's why they're competing with Ram and Ford, and they're losing market share consistently. And I believe that the reason behind that is that people don't trust the brand. And the other thing is they're selling them for too much. I mean, these vehicles have inflated beyond the scale of what anyone's going to pay. And unfortunately, you have people that walk into the dealership and they still want to pay 150K for a Denali Ultimate because they need plastic that looks like wood instead of plastic that looks like plastic. And so it continues to verify that their business model works. And I know it's funny, but that's literally what happens. They're like, okay, well, this plastic looks like wood instead of plastic, and that's worth another $40,000.
And honestly, that demographic, what you told me on the phone earlier, because we're so involved in it, I tend to think, oh gosh, everyone knows that these aren't real Allison transmissions, but you said no, that's not true. I do think that market of people that unfortunately, spend $100,000 on a truck, a lot of those guys, they aren't on YouTube all day. They aren't researching this stuff. They do think it has an Allison. They really believe it. So it's worth the branding.
It's misinformative. I mean,
Yep.
these people don't know. And the quantity of people that call our sales line or tech line or whatever, and they truly have it in their head that this is an Allison transmission, quite literally because there's a badge on the truck that says Allison transmission,
Yeah.
and so they're not wrong for thinking that. But it's misleading. It's puffery. It's not, and it's just not accurate. The transmission is literally just made by General Motors. It's a big 10L80. That's all it is. The transmission that they can't get out of a shop, the 10L80, this is an enlarged one. Take them both apart. It's almost the same thing inside. They're just lying. They're literally making it up. And so when they tell you that this is an Allison, that is a lie. That is a lie. And sometimes people ask why I'm so like aggressive towards like General Motors or companies in general, Land Rover, Ferrari, like Ford, all of them. And why I say things like, oh, why don't you sue me if you have an issue, right? Because people call us and they send us mean letters, but they never do anything about it. Well, you know why? Because I'm correct. Because I'm correct. Sue me. I'll go in there and just prove that I'm correct. At the end of the day, the reason that these companies can't and don't touch me is because I am literally correct. They are lying if they told you the 10L1000 is a proprietary IP of Allison in terms of how it was engineered. It is not. Take it apart. It's a 10L80. They are lying. They're lying to the public. They are literally lying to the public. I will take pictures. In fact, I've done this so many times, I'd just be doing it again. I'll take pictures inside a 10-speed Allison, a 10L80. We've got them at the company because we design parts for both of them, obviously. So take apart an Allison, take apart a 10-speed, a 10L1000. You tell me what fits in the other. I mean, it's just complete and total fake ass news.
Isn't it wild that the internet is blowing up over them getting remarried as if it's some sort of a win for them to legally, now it's like, now we can legally lie to customers and put the Allison badge back on our truck. Like that.
Well,
that's what everybody's excited about. Why are they excited about it?
because they get press cars from General Motors, and the only way to get press cars in the automotive industry is by not having a gag reflex. That's why.
All right. Well, yeah, I don't think there's anything else we could say on it.
Yeah,
But
that's
yeah,
all there is to it. That's all there is to it. Mark my words, look into this. And I'm not bashing people, like I'm a huge fan of Doug DeMuro and Throttle House and the Straight Pipes. Like I love their videos. It's awesome. But and to be honest, to be fair, sometimes they have authentic criticisms. You know what I really like about Throttle House is they give Ferrari a Cleveland steamer every time they get on camera. And I'm like, you know what? At least you're honest. I'm surprised Ferrari gives them press cars. So I'm not saying you're automatically full of it if you get press cars. I am saying that press cars are a form of capital. It's a resource. And if you're getting them, then you're being resourced by that company that you're being asked to be impartial about, meaning that you have a conflict of interest. The analogical comparison I give people is that, for example, during COVID, and this is not a pro-vax, anti-vax, I'm not saying anything like that, but just during COVID, a lot of the for-profit media networks were telling people, hey, take the vaccine, all this good stuff. And again, I'm not saying for or not, I'm just saying they wanted everyone to take a lot of vaccines. And some people, in my opinion, correctly, saw that the companies that make the vaccines were advertising on the networks and said, well, hey, that seems like a financial conflict of interest. That's, that's a yellow flag for corruption, and it's making me have questions, right? I don't think that that thought process is totally unreasonable, right? And again, that's not a statement for or against. I'm just saying if there's a visible conflict of interest, then people are not wrong to be curious about if that conflict of interest is altering your input on the topic. So when you get press cars, you have to understand, like, they're not going to give them to people that do brand damage. Those are investments. They're spending money to make those press cars and get them out to people. They want a return on their investment. That's what they do with everything. The return on investment is that you build brand value by giving what is called a generally positive review. All right. And so this is why you get these companies where they'll do 40 minutes of how great the vehicle is. And then they have 60 seconds where they bag on it. And the other 39 minutes is how great it is. Right. It's to appear to be impartial when in reality they're doing advertising. And so if you receive press cars, it's because you play the game and you do marketing for them. They don't give press cars to people that they don't think are going to go say favorable things about it after the fact. Why would they? If somebody gets press cars, you cannot trust them to be impartial. That's why I get so shocked when people say, I don't get a paycheck from Toyota. Well, okay, but if you get press cars and free vacations, then it sounds like you do get paid by Toyota. You just don't get a paycheck by Toyota. But when you say you don't get it, and I'm just picking on Toyota in an arbitrary example, think about the language. I don't get a paycheck or I don't get cash from this company. Well, why aren't you saying I'm not subsidized by this company? This company doesn't pay me anything. Or
Yeah.
like, I don't get any resources from this company. Like, I don't have a relationship with this company. Why is it I don't get a paycheck from the company?
Right.
Well, because
Yeah.
you get other compensation. You get free vacations, okay, where they take you there and they give you the Marvin Gaye and Chardonnay, right? And they get you immersed in like this, fog of intimacy about this vehicle, and they want you to be kind of drunk when you go review it. They want, like, they do. I've been to these events. I was at the unveiling for the Rialto in Malibu, California. Like, that's what they do. They're serving alcohol the whole time because most people, when they drink, like random things more, most people. And so when I was at that unveiling, they have this crazy expensive wine and they're just giving it out for free and stuff. They know what they're doing. They want people to say favorable things about the vehicle. They want people to be bubbly, right? It's all manipulative. That's, if you've ever been to a press release for a car, it's this like tristic, intimate event where they want everyone to be immersed in the moment and dramatic and all this puffery. And the end result is that people are manipulated by their environment into saying all this favorable stuff. They have psychologists that work on this stuff. They have psychologists who study how to market to people in a way where they're most likely to have a positive experience when it comes to public relations and communicating the reasons to buy the product to the press, obviously. So market psychologists are a huge market. Like, I just don't understand why the public doesn't know this. And this is why Next Gen Drivetrain's mission is to increase automotive literacy in the public, is because this is the that this industry does, and people just don't know any better. Like, they don't know that there are companies that hire psychologists to manipulate you into loving the car if you're a journalist so that you mislead other people into buying the car, right? Like, they don't know that that's a thing. And so it's a giant head game, and people need to question everything they see. Don't trust anybody. I say this in every video. Don't trust anybody. Not me, not the guy down the street, not other companies. I don't care how much you like a company. There's thousands of people that love Next Gen. I see them in the comments. But dude, don't just trust people because they're talking and you like what they say. Like, you have to be distrusting of this industry. Let people earn your trust. My staff will earn your trust. So for me, I don't feel bad if people are distrusting. We'll earn it. But a lot of other companies run on misinformation, or as I call it, fake news. And so they're selling lies to people, like putting an Allison transmission badge on a truck that doesn't have an Allison transmission. That sounds like horseshit to me.
Well, thanks, Nate. Appreciate it.
Of course, have me on.
Yep. We'll see how it goes. See if they're ultra reliable next year.
They're not going to change anything. They're not going to change anything.
It'll be time will tell. All the data will be there.
Well, my prediction, and I encourage everyone to record it, is that the vehicle will not fundamentally change. They just probably paid more money to use it.